So welcome back to another episode of the Engineer Future Podcast. Today I have Callie, my wife. We've been thinking about doing an episode together for a little while, and we thought this was the perfect opportunity as we just completed 4 years of marriage, our anniversary. So I think it was a good opportunity to share some of the things we do, and with me volunteering so much and doing so many things, 2 children, and our experience kind of raising them as two people in STEM. I think was a great opportunity just to bring her to the podcast and just talk about it. So Kyle, do you want to start us off with your background and what you did in college?
So for college, I also went to South Dakota State University, and I got my degrees in mathematics and Spanish. I started out pursuing computer science, actually, and that only lasted about a week, as I feel like a lot of us do change majors right away when you get into school, especially within the STEM fields. You pick an engineering degree and switch between them early on when it's easy to transfer. So I switched to math, eventually ended up adding Spanish after studying abroad the summer after my freshman year and realizing I didn't need too many more credits to get that degree as well. So yeah, I ended up with both degrees and graduated from South Dakota State University in 2018 with those degrees, as well as with a newborn. We had a 1-week-old when we both walked, me for my undergraduate degrees and Luis for his master's. So
yeah, and I think that was pretty unique. I don't know, I feel like having a kid right as you graduated from grad school was different for me. It was definitely challenging, and at the time we were thinking of moving to Colorado. We were still living in South Dakota, so there were definitely a lot of changes that happened like really close to each other. How did you feel when we were doing that? Like, did you feel like we had it figured out? Did you feel like we're just winging it? How did you feel when we were kind of going through all of that?
I felt like I had it more figured out than you did. I felt like I at least knew a little bit more of what was going on than you did. I have a sister who's a lot younger than me, so I had a little bit of experience with babies and younger children. So I knew what to expect in that realm. I mean, it did come faster than anyone probably could have expected, but I mean, we always talk about if it wouldn't have come then, if Leo wouldn't have joined our family then, we still might be trying to figure out when the best time to add kiddos would be. So it was the perfect time for us, and we figured it out as we went. So
and I think was something that was harder for us was like you were looking into going to PhD for math, which is definitely not very easy. And that's where we moved to Colorado for you to go to CU Boulder. Do you want to tell us that experience and how did you feel during that time, and what advice do you have for other people maybe going through the same situation?
So I started applying to graduate schools not long after finding out that we were pregnant. It was probably around the time that I was applying to the schools that I applied to. So we knew ahead of time and were able to kind of pick schools that would kind of best fit where we wanted to be. So we didn't pick anything super far away. We wanted to be within driving distance of family. And the schools that I kind of settled in on were 3 different schools that I visited after I was accepted. Talked with the professors about how I would be supported as a mother of an infant in their PhD programs, and as well as current students. I talked with them about it as well. So that was really helpful. I mean, none of them had any experience with a mother entering their programs like that with a newborn. So actually the school that I settled on, CU Boulder, in my first semester there, they awarded me with an award for diversity in the department for being the only mother in the department that was a student, which was really wonderful of them. But going into that first semester, the summer before, we were in Boulder, Colorado. We had a couple of friends here that had also moved here for graduate school, but we virtually didn't really know anyone, and I had a newborn, and nobody that we knew had a newborn, that was for sure. So I spent a lot of time by myself with Leo, and walking around Boulder, getting to know the town a little bit, and really trying to do some soul searching to figure out if this was really what I wanted to do, and reading a lot of books that were talking about how mothers need to do something for themselves as well. So I went into the year pretty confident that I could do it, that I was going to enjoy my program, and that I was going to enjoy learning because I always have. And entering that first semester, I was pretty overwhelmed because I was really busy, especially compared to the other graduate students that mostly didn't have even a significant other. And those that did obviously did not have children, and most of them weren't married either. So it was a huge difference for me. Hard to find people to relate to outside of professors. And I was very well supported within the department, so I think that you will probably find that wherever you go, if you are a mother entering a PhD program, you will find a lot of support, as they really want to. Once you enter into a PhD program, they're investing in you as well as you them. So they really want to do everything to keep you in the program and to support you and to help you succeed and do well in the program. So I had a lot of support within the program, and I had a lot of opportunities to step back when I needed to, but that made me get even further behind, and also kind of take a step back and realize that what I was doing wasn't something that was lighting me up anymore. It wasn't something that was really exciting me outside of my spending time with my son. And I think the last straw was when I received a piece of advice that told me that, and I know that this is great for some people, so if this is you, that is wonderful, but I got the piece of advice that sometimes you just have to get babysitters for your nights and weekends so you can spend more time on your research. And then the little bit of quality time that you do with your kids will be more quality because you'll be able to fully invest in them. And that was just not how I saw my life panning out. I wanted to spend a lot more time with my kiddos, which kind of ties into the rest of my story, and the fact that after that first semester, I took a leave of absence. I was a long-term substitute teacher for the second semester at a local high school, local Catholic school, where I just taught Spanish classes every other day. So I had pretty much every other day of the week to spend at home with Leo, or to take some time to grade papers and lesson plan as needed. And then I continued doing that for another year when I finally told my program that I wasn't going to return. So I after stepping away from that, I was able to see that I wanted to both prioritize some sort of outside form of work for myself, but also be able to spend a lot more time at home with our kiddos. So yeah.
So I would say that you are definitely just the smartest one between the two of us. When we met, I think you had a 4.0 at that time, and I think I had like a 3.2 or something like that. Which is, I mean, I don't think it was super bad for engineering, but I was definitely struggling a lot just with the culture and everything. And I just remember when we had that one class together and we started kind of dating and studying together, I realized how much more I should study, and like it just changed my mindset of studying a lot. I think after that I got like a 4.0 that last semester and like all through grad school. Yeah, so it was definitely it was a change, and I know probably doing the PhD was very hard, and doing all of that with a kid and everything was hard. I was working, so I was definitely not like at home all the time, but I think we talked about it a lot, and I think it was kind of a decision between the two of us to like not continue you doing the PhD. I think we still think that you at some point you want to go back and either get a master's degree or a PhD, but we just don't know when that's going to happen. I think right now, I guess that's kind of what we will talk next, like what are you doing right now, but I feel like with COVID, a lot of things changed, and I think we're grateful that you were able to find something that allow you to work from home and be with the kids. I know we have always talked about that, but do you want to just tell the people, like the listeners, what do you do right now, and how does that like relate to like your major? Because I think I know it's hard for people to not be working on what they graduated from, especially if you have a degree in math and Spanish. I feel like there's a lot of careers that you could be doing, but like maybe just touch also on the like prioritizing family and what do you value as part of our family, basically.
So When you graduate with degrees in math and Spanish, no one ever actually knows what you're going to do. So I think that was kind of helpful in setting me up for not pigeonholing myself into a specific career, because I was a tour guide on campus, and that was constantly a question I got from parents that I was giving students tours to. And they would always ask, well, what do you do with that? Do you teach? And I would say that I would love to teach, but you can really do pretty much anything. So after teaching high school Spanish for about a year and a half, I was going to be continuing teaching full-time math at the same high school. But and this was probably 6 months post-COVID starting that I decided, and it was pretty close after our second child, Lucia, was born. And I decided that I was just going to stay home with the kiddos. Kind of in part because of COVID, but also because going back as a full-time teacher was really going to, I felt like, be very similar to my PhD program, especially as a first-year teacher with classes I had never taught before. I was going to be starting completely over. And teaching is a lot of work. So I decided to step away from teaching and stay home with my kiddos and see kind of what opportunities presented themselves. I'm much more productive when I have something else filling my time, especially with housework and things like that. So I definitely always kind of kept my eyes open to some part-time work opportunities that I could do from home, so I could still be home with our babies and not have to figure out daycare again, because that was also a really hard part of leaving my job. Actually, probably the hardest part was that we loved our daycare, and it's really hard to find a daycare that you love. And giving up our spots for that was really hard. But, and this is the classic case of it's not what you know, it's who you know. So now I work in an industry that I knew nothing about previously at all. I started part-time consulting for a market research company, actually, is probably the most broad way to explain it. I started part-time consulting in November of 2020, I believe. So I'd spent a few months home with no job, just kind of waiting to see what came about. We really weren't in any hurry at all or anything, but I had a friend that I actually knew from Facebook. So the greatness of social media, as I'm sure a lot of your Engineering Our Future listeners know. I had a friend that I knew from Facebook, and she introduced me to her other company that she was working for, this market research company, and said she would love to get me in as a writer, because she just thought that she knew I was someone who would really thrive doing something else from home than just being home with my kiddos, because that's what she does, is she works full-time from home with her 4 kiddos, and our youngest are the exact same age. They were born on the same day. So she put my name in at the company. They decided after a while to take me on as a writer. And so for a while, I was just doing part-time consulting, setting up some Google Sheets and doing some writing. But in February then, so what was that, about 3 months later, February of 2021, they asked me to come on part-time, as long as that was something I was interested in, and it was. So then I was part-time from February until mid-May, so just very recently, middle of May of 2021, I started full-time with the company because they asked me to come on full-time. So what I do, as Luis struggles with explaining, is I work for a market research company that actually works mostly with a lot of pharmaceutical companies. They're expanding more into finance and different food industries as well, but mainly works with a lot of the big pharmaceutical companies in optimizing their messaging. So the commercials that we see, the pamphlets that we see, both for healthcare providers as well as patients, we use what we call So it's behavioral science, behavioral studies, and decision heuristics, which those are the quick mental shortcuts that we use to make decisions every day. So, for example, we are heavily influenced by hundreds of different heuristics, and we tune our messages to a specific heuristic that we believe will market well to a specific drugs customers, for example. So an example of a heuristic is negativity bias, for example, meaning that when you go into a performance review, for example, your boss could tell you 100 wonderful, great things, and you hear one negative thing, and that is the one thing that you are going to hold on to. So maybe we want to write a message that draws out something negative that you will hold on to and then better remember. Not necessarily about the drug, but using it in a way that promotes the drug and gets it to stick in your mind. Like, you wouldn't want this terrible thing to happen to you. So, as an example. So that's what I do in a broad sense. But in the company, I am just kind of starting out. Again, this was somewhere that I did not have any experience, and it was a totally who you know situation. But I've done a good job of presenting my mathematical skills as well as my starting out as a writer for them. So in helping them write these messages / set up Google Sheets, I expressed my interest in helping optimize different things in their Google environment, doing some coding behind the scenes, and even figuring out how some of the macros work that we've been using. So in providing that input, I believe that has kind of helped me to also grow in the company and providing just a different side of things with my math background in a very heavy psychology and behavioral studies environment, which is really an exciting environment to be in since, obviously I majored in math and Spanish, so I like to stretch my brain in both ways.
So a lot of women struggle, especially in STEM, to stay in their careers because they think they have to choose between having a family, finding work. Obviously, this past year with COVID, kind of everything changed because a lot of people are working from home now, which makes having kids and still having a career a lot easier. How did you approach that when you were looking for jobs, and when we had Leo, and now that we had Lucia? How did your mentality change? Did you feel you had to choose between them? Or did you feel you could do both to a certain degree? Or what was going through your mind through that process, and what advice do you have for other people kind of thinking about that?
For me, and you know this about me, and sometimes this is controversial in advice that people give, but this is just my personality and how I am. I'm always very straightforward upfront with even potential employers that this is my situation, this is why I've left my previous situations, and those are my priorities. So when I was applying to the long-term substituting position at the high school, I let the principal know, right away, that my priority in leaving my PhD program was I wanted more time with my family, and just making that known and making it known that I, might have different commitments at different times for our son or things like that. So I always make that very well known. And I also made that very well known when kind of moving from consulting to part-time, and then from part-time to full-time within the company that I'm in now. I was very upfront. I was very forward with my concerns, explaining to them that I was concerned that I wouldn't be able to give them as much as they needed from me because I was going to be home with my kiddos and I have to prioritize them. And for me, if they would have said that was a problem, then I wouldn't have taken any of the positions. So I know that can be something that certain companies may have biases against, but for me, the companies that I have found and obviously pursued employment with, they are and were very supportive of having a family. I worked at a Catholic high school. Obviously, it's a very pro-family environment. And then I now work at a company that has assured me time and time again that taking care of my children comes first. Things that I need to do for them comes first. Needing to block time off for myself and for them is a priority. As long as I'm getting my work done, they really aren't concerned about me focusing on them. So that's always been something that I have been very open with employers about. And I know a lot of people say that can affect whether you get hired or not. But in my case, then I didn't want to be there because I'd been in a very supportive environment of having a family, but it was an environment where I probably wasn't going to thrive, prioritizing my family in the ways that I was in my PhD program. So I just know that I need to find an environment that's going to fit that, and that me telling them these things right away is not going to scare them away per se, because then I know it's not going to be a good fit for me. So
yeah, that's something I have actually talked to Jay, the president of the company I work for right now. Is we were recruiting a lot this year, and he always tells me, like, I wish we were getting more application from women, because at the company we are very open to be very flexible. I mean, we're going down to Colombia in a few months, and I'm going to be able to work there for a week. There's our HR person is pregnant right now, and she's taking a family leave for like 3 months, I believe. And obviously everyone kind of having the ability to work from home makes things a lot easier. And I think overall it's just very flexible. So, and I've seen this with many people I've talked on the podcast, is there is always the companies that are not flexible, and maybe that's not the right fit for you. And there are companies that are super flexible and are willing to invest in you and your family and really care about you being mentally well and having the opportunity to spend with the family. And it's just a matter of finding those companies and a place where you feel empowered and appreciated. I think it's kind of comes down to. And I know I don't think you have felt bad in any of the companies you have worked for, and that's, I mean, if you accept those positions because you felt like you were going to be supporting those positions, and I felt the same in all the companies I've worked for. I think, like, as an international student, sometimes it's hard to find those positions because all the limitations and everything, but just seeing the opportunities out there and seeing what we have gone through, I think there is always a place where you're going to be appreciated and a place you're going to fit in within the company.
Yeah, you just have to know that that's going to exist, and that you can't just limit yourself to the one opportunity that you think is the only one out there. Because if it's not going to be a good fit, then you're not going to be happy there, and it's not going to be good for either you or your employer. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a good transition to kind of what we do each week, like with the Porch Tag, what we call. Kind of came from just sitting out in the porch and just talking through stuff every week. And I don't remember where we got this from. I think it was a podcast that you were listening to, or an article or something that we read. But basically what we do is just sit down for an hour, sometimes 2 or more, and just go through a list of items that will help us get through the week a lot easier, like events, like if you have AAC or SCI events during the week, making sure we have that in the calendar. Obviously, we have all the calendar shared and everything, but just a place where we can both communicate what's going on in the week, what we want to accomplish. Also a place where we can just be open and just talk through stuff that we may have been going through, and maybe you did something wrong or I did something wrong, and it's just a place where we can be open about it. Sometimes, like, going through the motions during the week, it's harder to bring that up. But do you want to just touch on that and just maybe tell listeners kind of what we do and what we have found has helped us with that?
And this is especially important if you have a roommate or a husband or a wife, because, I mean, for us, we kind of go through everything that's going to happen in a week, as well as really touch base on how our house and each other are doing. So you're the master of kind of our little list that we go through. But some different things that we touch on in no particular order is we review our finances. We talk about the meals that I've planned for the week, and maybe when I want you to take charge of supper or something for a night, depending on when you have events going on. We talk about when I have work meetings and you'll need to be in charge of the kiddos, and vice versa. We talk about Again, like you said, things that are going well, things that are not going well between us and our relationship that maybe we didn't have time to sit down and bring up. Well, we were making dinner and the kiddos were going crazy or something. What else do we touch on? Some of our goals for the week, as well as just really going over I think the biggest thing is going over our calendars and in that also kind of figuring out how to weave our goals into our calendars. So this week, for example, we're recording this obviously before the podcast will come out, but we are needing to mow our lawn. We need to pack for a trip we have coming up. And we also needed to clean our house. So we blocked out different evenings and different times for that. Luis blocked out different times that he wanted to record different podcast episodes. I sometimes will block out times in the evening that I want to get specific work done if I haven't had time during the day. And yeah, I think that's about everything that we cover. But it's kind of just a really good review of the week and where we are going to need help with certain things. Or just giving each other a heads up as to what's going to be going on and what we've been thinking and feeling and doing lately. So,
and I think with that, and something we started maybe last summer, kind of when Lucia was born, is I can get carried away volunteering a lot and having a lot of meetings, especially during the week, plus figuring out when I can record podcast episodes with guests and everything. You can get pretty filled up really quickly the week. So I think we established some rules that I can only have like one podcast recorded in a week, maybe two in a very special occasion, and also having meetings at night. It's more like maybe once a week. Also having like basically 2 different events a week during the night, just to kind of limit myself. And I have obviously it's hard with all the meetings and everything, but like, I have had to like decline some meetings because that's kind of what we set as a goal for us, and being able to spend time with the family and spend time together, it's something we really value. So setting those rules, I think, was helpful and healthy for the both of us to not go crazy with me being gone all the time. And now that we are both working from home with 2 kids running around, it can get pretty stressful pretty quickly. Something I wanted to ask you is how, like from your perspective, seeing me doing all of these things, volunteering, the podcast and everything, how do you feel about all of that? And maybe just talk about what we have gone through, like different phases of like me volunteering and doing the podcast, as well as maybe some advice for other people going through similar situations, or just tell me what can I do better in terms of this.
Well, kind of to start out as, in a way, a piece of advice in this situation when you have maybe a significant other that is very involved and likes to participate in a lot of different activities and things like that, which has also been me, but it's been something that I have really not done a lot of since graduating college because we've had babies, and they take a lot of time, a lot of good time though, but is that I don't really entirely see it as like just your activities. I mean, I see it as a way that you are obviously building upon your skills and yourself, but in a way that then kind of builds on our family. So that's a good way to look at it, is to not just think of it as stuff that they are doing for themselves, but a way for them not only to in turn kind of grow themselves for your family, but also just grow themselves for themselves, because we all need a little bit of something for ourselves as well, especially depending on our personalities, as we have learned. But I mean, in general, and you already kind of touched on this, we went through a time where you were very busy a lot of nights. In fact, almost most nights of the week you were very busy, and I was very overwhelmed by that, especially with a newborn and a toddler. It was hard to have a lot of nights where I was doing bedtime by myself. So with a newborn and a toddler, it was kind of overwhelming to have you busy most nights. So we just talked about it. And I think you even felt a little overwhelmed and stretched thin. It wasn't really a way for you to fully give to any specific area that you were pursuing. So it was a good way for both of us to kind of come to a compromise and figure out, okay, what are the activities that you really enjoy? What are the ones that you find yourself getting the most from and also giving the most to? And like what brings you the most joy to be involved in. So really kind of identifying that and setting boundaries around, one or two things a week. And if that means 3 or 4 things are falling in a week, maybe you have to skip one of those meetings this month. That's worked really well for us. And then just kind of communicating that up front or trying to schedule as much of it for after bedtime as possible has kind of been a way we've worked around that. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think we started that again like last summer. I think before COVID, I had a few meetings that we had to drive down to Denver, and a few meetings like around Boulder. But I don't think it was that much. I didn't feel like I was gone that much. And I feel like once COVID started, everyone started having these Zoom calls, and it just kind of started flooding in, and everyone just kind of meeting all the time. And I think around that time, I really had to just be real with myself and understand that I cannot do all of these things, and some of them were not really bringing joy to me, and I wasn't being as productive as I will want to, and it just didn't fulfill me at the time. And I know there were bigger things I wanted to do. That's kind of around the time I started the podcast, and I started doing some other volunteering within like SEI, some more, I wouldn't say like advanced committees, but committees that I knew I was going to be part of that bring me more joy than some of the ones I was, or the other activities that I was part of. So I think, again, like talking through it during Porch Talk, that's kind of the time where we talk through a lot of this stuff. We also have like a board meeting each year that we just started this year. Maybe that could be another episode where you and I can record going through all of that, because that was that was really productive. And I think we learn a lot about each other, and we learn about what we value as a family and as individuals, and just I think it was a good experience to plan everything and plan the year and just talk through a lot of this stuff that otherwise we would not have the time, or we couldn't find the time with 2 kids and everything. So I think that was great to do that, and maybe we can record that in a future episode. I think we're kind of run out of time, but I just wanted to ask you if you had any last advice for mothers that are working, especially like in STEM, where we for sure are losing a lot of women to just feeling overwhelmed, feeling like they need to choose between their careers and their families. And I think just having people like you that are prioritizing both. Obviously, family always comes first, even for me in terms of my career, but just shows that there's room to do both. And I just kind of want to hear your advice and maybe some last words of wisdom.
So just a piece of advice that I have is that I feel like oftentimes in our culture, we feel like we either need to be fully invested in our work and that we can't be distracted by having children or figuring out when that's a good time, or we need to drop everything and stay at home and devote everything to our children and really not have a life outside of that. Neither of those are a bad situation if that fits your personality. Like I said, I got advice from people. I've gotten advice from people on both sides of that spectrum, both in graduate school and after graduate school, that love their lives on either side of that. But you don't have to pick a side. You can choose both. You can choose something that lights you up outside of your family. And that is very important for a lot of us, to have something that allows us to not really like accomplish something, but just keep your brain working in a different sense. And let me tell you, being a stay-at-home mom really keeps your brain working in a lot of ways, but it's very different than solving like a math problem or an engineering problem. And that sense of accomplishment you get from that and contributing to something outside of yourself and outside of your family. It's kind of a different form of accomplishment and encouragement that you can get. So I don't think that you need to pick a side. You don't need to pick a working mom side. or a stay-at-home mom side. And as you have children, if you don't already, you will probably notice a lot of that pressure on social media to be one or the other and be all in one way or the other. But I think, and as you've pointed out and I've pointed out, there are becoming so many more companies that are willing to work with you on either side of that spectrum. So especially like in the engineering field, I know one way that people can tend to go is by taking a day off a week. I know you have a working mother at your office who does that. She works 4 days a week, or asking for less hours in general. Because oftentimes, if you might be very scared to ask your company for that, but they just want to keep you. They don't want to lose you. They don't want to have to hire someone new, train someone new. They don't want to lose you. So they are oftentimes very willing to work with you and want to make that happen, because sometimes you're even more productive in less hours, because then they're really getting the best of you rather than just getting the 30 hours that are good of you and then another 10 hours that you really wish you weren't there and you wish you were home with your kiddos or something like that. So my last piece of advice there, I guess, to sum all of that up, is to not just pigeonhole yourself into I am a working mom or I am a stay-at-home mom. You can have kind of a best of both worlds. You can still pursue your passions outside of motherhood and still be very fulfilled as a mother too. So being open with your employer, making it just kind of an open discussion, is a really great way to approach that. And it's not as scary as you think. So, yeah.
And I think you've always been like so involving. You were so involved in college, and I think your personality is similar to mine, where like you want to be doing a lot of things all the time. And I think being a mom has been, I think, fun for you. I think we have 2 kids and we love them so much. But I think at some point you wanted to do something else, and that's kind of where you started looking for different opportunities of working from home or just finding a group of women, working women. I know you had something like that at CU Boulder where you kind of get together and talk about things, and I think that's also been helpful. From my side as the father, I think communicating more and being like understanding of you being overwhelmed sometimes when I maybe have a busy day at work or something, and you have a busy day at home with the kids and maybe work. And obviously, it's a lot easier right now that we're both working from home because I can take an hour off, maybe take the kids for a walk or something. But it's just having communication and and just having like the and just having like the roles of each other very clear, because sometimes that's when problems start happening. Like if there's a week we don't really talk about it, and you expect me to make supper one day, but I expect you to make dinner that day. Like that's when we start derailing from what we want to do.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, as women, we tend to kind of feel like we need to take everything else on as well. And so making sure that you can ask for help and outsource. I mean, I'm obviously very type A personality. We both are very type A personality. I like everything done very specifically, and I like how I do it. But relinquishing some of that control, letting you help me in certain ways is helpful as well. As working moms and as moms in general and as women in general, we tend to think we need to be in charge. Not necessarily because we are women, but just because we like that. A lot of us, especially in this profession, in the STEM field, we like to have control over our household. We like to have control over doing the laundry and meal planning and grocery shopping and scheduling all of the appointments, and just all in cleaning and all the things like that, and dishes. But kind of figuring out a good balance where you can relinquish some of that control and ask for help is really important. So yeah, communicating that, letting your significant other know, or your roommates know what you need help with is really important. So that's somewhere we're still working on, because I still do a lot of that stuff because I like that control.
Yeah, and I think just being home has helped me just be more available to help you and everything. I think that's been good, and especially now you're working, just sharing that responsibility has been something that we still need to work on, but I think we're working towards that with this new normal after COVID. So I think that's gonna do it for today. Thank you for coming to the podcast after about 6 months of begging you to record this with me. I think there's a lot of things we still need to figure out, but I think we always try to just improve a little bit each week and just kind of find ways that work for us to balance work and family and all the things we have kind of going on. So thank you everyone for coming back to this episode, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation between me and Callie. I will try to get back to another episode in the future, but I hope you got some value out of this episode and overall with the podcast and all the things all the conversations we've been having with all the guests of the show. If you are not subscribed to the podcast, make sure you subscribe to receive future episodes right on your inbox. And make sure you check out the newsletter. I've been sharing some behind the scenes, some information about the P exam that I learned taking the exam a few months ago, and I've been releasing a few more episodes kind of on this topic and sharing more resources on the website. So make sure you check out the newsletter at luisfelipeduque.com/newsletter to receive a weekly note of me of just sharing kind of the things I've been working on and learning about. So that's it for today. Again, thank you, Jack Winders, for the music. I will talk to you on the next one, but for now, let's continue engineering our future.